it's different. So here, when you go to a restaurant, you actually have to calculate. In there, we just like, oh, here is like 10 reais. Hello everyone, my name is Dai. I am a Brazilian English teacher and Portuguese teacher, living in the US for the past 15 months. And during this time here, I could notice quite a few differences, like cultural differences. And I just want to share with you guys. It doesn't mean they're good or bad, like they're just different. So yeah, let's go to number one. So right off when I arrived here, in October 2021, I would like talk to people and they would not like give me feedback as much as like I would have like like in Brazil. So there we would go like during the conversation, people would be like, verdade, isso mesmo. And then here you're just like talking and the person is just like waiting for you to finish. So you could say like, oh, you know what I mean, or like, did you get it? And it doesn't mean it's bad, it's just like different. So you kind of just like wait until the end to see if the person understood. So there's just not much like interaction between like the listener and the speaker. But that's just like one difference. Number two is that when you're driving here, if the light is red, you can actually turn to the right, not to the left, but you can turn to the right. And this is different because in Brazil, like if you're driving and you turn right, like you get a ticket, so you don't want to do that. And here is just like a few places, if you cannot turn right, then there's like a sign that says it. But in Brazil, it's basically like there's just like this thing doesn't exist. I know other girls that came from Europe and they're also like studying here, and they said like they don't have this in Europe, at least not in Germany. And they also think it's like very interesting because you don't need to sit there and wait. You can just turn and go to whatever you have to go. So this is quite interesting. Number three is that you come here and then in Brazil you have like this big huge meals for lunch and dinner, like rice and beans, salad, like like grilled chicken, like like meat, whatever, eggs. In here people like have mostly like a sandwich or something that they can take to work. So they usually have like like peanut butter and jelly sandwich or like grilled cheese, but we don't really have like sandwich for lunch. I think we would have for dinner but not for lunch. And mostly like in my family, at least, we usually do like once a week or just on the weekends. But mostly like food, like we call it real food, like vegetables, rice and beans, meat and stuff. So that's just a difference that for me was actually the biggest one when I arrived. Number four is that people have a really consistent schedule. So like we also have a schedule in Brazil to do stuff, but it's more like work and school. So I remember like watching from my window at home, I could see like people, going up the street, walking and driving at the same time when they're coming from work or from school. But here is like more activities. So like people walk their dogs at the same time. They go for a walk. They, go jogging. They do most stuff like go to the gym, right? Like at the same time every day. So they have like a really good routine, and I think we could learn from that. It's actually really good to like have a very consistent schedule to do stuff. But that's a very good difference. Number five is that here people think ahead, like at least a year ahead. So for us in Brazil, like today is January 1st, and we would do our New Year's resolutions on like New Year's Eve, and then usually forget about it. But basically what I'm trying to say is that here people know what they're doing for like August, like that's when school starts. So like people actually know when like they're going to school, of course, and they know when they're traveling, and they know when they're like, changing jobs and stuff. So here I like that you actually plan things with like time. And for us in Brazil, it's like, oh, my vacation is next week, so I need to start planning my vacation. And then, like you have like a week or two to plan, and that's it. So I actually like the idea of like, well, school starts, like the year starts in like September. So for us, the year starts like after Carnival, which is like February or March. Um, the school year or like work, not really, but whoever is like a teacher in a school or like a student will get like vacations, which is also different here. So like for us, we would have like December, January, February, and then July. In here is more like July, kind of like August, and then September you're back to school. So those are different months. And then of course we have like winter breaks and spring breaks and stuff, but they're just like a week or 2 weeks. So this is definitely a difference. Like I do know it's because of the weather. So our school year starts when the year is like starting as well, basically. So I feel like that's just a lot happening at the same time, and you don't really have time to like apply for a school like a year before, like months before. So there's like, it's not necessary for us to do that. You can just like apply 2 or 3 months before, because that's when school's gonna start. So I don't really know why except for like the weather. But that's interesting. Number 6 is something I still struggle with, which is giving tips. So here there is like this culture that, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, like if you go to like Starbucks or a restaurant or anywhere, you can tip people, like you can give money, which can be like $1 or like 10% of what you ate, or 15%, 20%. And in Brazil we don't really have like this kind of like mandatory thing, or like, oh, nobody, it's not written, but everybody does that. So we usually tip people like casually, but not really like kind of like a unspoken rule, you know it's different. So here when you go to a restaurant, you actually have to calculate. In there we just like, oh, here is like 10 reais or 5 reais or whatever you want to give to the person, and you don't really have to do it. And if you don't do, it's fine. But here, if you don't do it, then it's kind of like rude, because that people usually, at least what people told me about here is like, for example, Starbucks, they're like students, so they need to pay like student loans and stuff, and it's helpful for them. But it's just nice to tip people. But yeah, I feel like it's just a cultural difference, and it's interesting. So basically I'm saying everything is interesting, as you guys can see. Number 7 is that our country evolves around soccer, and we do watch NFL, we do watch like NBA, but we don't like, our country doesn't like leave off that. So here we have like baseball during like summer, or like we have a lot of basketball on Thanksgiving and stuff, which is really cool. But our soccer is basically like the whole year. We have different seasons, of course, but we have like soccer everywhere happening all the time. At least like Wednesday and Sundays you're gonna see in your neighborhood. So this is actually something like I miss a lot, or at least like having people around you to play, on the street or wherever you live. So I feel like this is financially and culturally and everything else difference, because even like scholarships here are a big deal with sports, not in Brazil, but here is definitely something we look for. Number 8 is also about driving, kind of like. So different from Brazil, the US is very dependable on cars. And if you don't drive, then depending on where you live, you're not gonna get anywhere on a walkable distance. And for me, when I arrived, having no sidewalks, just like big roads and highways, was really like getting me really upset because I used to walk a lot. I used to walk to take the bus to go to work, and then I used to walk to the grocery store. I used to walk to, do everything I used to do, like visit my grandma or anything, or even like teaching. I used to walk to go, anywhere. So I feel like this this definitely had a big impact on my body. Like I gained a lot of weight because I have been driving most for the like 15 months and not walking much. So yeah, it got me really upset to not have sidewalks. So if you were like in New York City, you have sidewalks, and if you're like in cities like New Jersey, like there, of course, there are places that you have sidewalks, but most places, like suburban areas or like different places, we won't have that. At least the place I've been. So you basically have to walk like on the side of the road, which is kind of dangerous. So I just rather drive. Number 9 is something that actually I've learned a lot from is, like when you have something to say, people are very direct, like when they have something to tell you. And we like to go around the bush in Brazil. So like we think about it, and then like we try to say it, and it's just like that, and then we say it. But we go around the bush like many times until we actually say that, especially to a boss or like a higher person, hierarchy. Um, but yeah, people like when you're direct and you just like go straight to the point, like what's the problem? That's the problem, let's fix it. Yes, perfect. So here good communication is like really appreciated, and in Brazil I don't think we like that. We actually kind of think it's rude when people are just like really direct. They like, I don't like this, let's change it, or we have a problem, let's fix it. This is like not, just not very like common, except like if you're superior, then you of course can say that and it's not going to sound rude. But if you're like an employee, for example, and you have to communicate a problem, then it's considered kind of rude, and even to your friends or family, like being too direct can actually sound not nice. And the last one, which I also had few problems with, is punctuality, because I've always considered myself somebody punctual. Of course, I had some like, like everybody gets late sometime. But here, if you're like on time, you're late, and then if you're like 5 minutes earlier, you're on time, kind of like. So, well, in Brazil, if you're like 15 minutes later, you're still on time. Most places, like especially for birthday parties, if you get there like, oh, the party's at 5, and if you get there like 5:30, you're like super early. So people expect us to get places like at least an hour after, except for work, that like some people of course get late, but you're not expected to get out of the time. So when you're talking about like meetings with your friends and families, like getting together, then you're expected to get late. And here, if you get late, then probably is going to be over. So that's actually, like you have to pay attention. Yeah, those are a few things that I've learned in this past like 15 months. And I do have more stuff to say, like more stuff to say, but for today I'll keep with this 10. I'd like to like remember all of them and have this memory, because I don't know, when I move back to Brazil, maybe I won't remember everything. So it's nice to like record it and keep this for myself as well. Yeah. Either if you're coming or going, that's gonna be helpful, I hope. And it's always a good experience to be in another country and like respect how people live. It's a different way of living. It doesn't mean it's worse or bad or better. You just like, you're getting used to it, and also respecting other ways of living. And yeah, that's it. I hope you have liked it. And if you want to know more about Brazilian culture, I'll link in the description a playlist on Spotify that you can listen to Brazilian music. And yeah, I hope you like it.